So I'm out in the Germain Robin aging cellar out in Redwood Valley, standing among there are more than 1,500 oak barrels out there, and I want to talk a little bit today about what aging is all about. When you put distillate inside an oak barrel and leave it there, about three important things happen. The first is there is a chemical interaction with oxygen, oxygenation it's called, from the air that happens to the distillate through the medium of the oak stave. And that obviously happens very, very slowly. I mean, these things, they're about 3/4 to an inch thick. You imagine oxygen, what it takes to pass through that wood, but anyway, it happens very slowly. And it produces changes in the product that deepen it, mature it, enrich it. I'm not a chemist. I don't know exactly what they are. You can look up articles online that talk about it at length. The second thing that happens is that the oak itself, alcohol is an incredibly powerful solvent. It's excellent at picking up flavors and aromas and holding them, maintaining them. That's why, perfume is, all the good perfumes are about 97% alcohol. And the alcohol is just there not so people can, drink it. It's so that, it's very good at picking up aromas and maintaining them. And then when you put it on your skin, you can, put perfume on your skin, you can feel the alcohol evaporating. It's a little bit cool. That's what's happening inside one of these barrels, is that the alcohol is, in a sense, digesting the components of the wood that makes up the barrel, and then turning them into other molecules, other forms of flavor and aroma. So, for example, in our Limousin barrels, the lignin has this very sweet sort of vanillin component that it turns into, and there's terpenes in the wood that turn into that sort of like tobacco-like, cedar-like aroma and flavor that you get in old distillates. And the cellulose, or the hemicellulose, is being broken down and turned into basically sugars, which is why a lot of these products have a certain sweet sense to them. They've picked that up from the oak. And the third thing that's happening is just there are internal changes that I don't pretend to understand, but you can taste them. If you, it happens in a glass bottle. If you take a bottle of Germain Robin that's been sitting somewhere for 6 years, it tastes appreciably deeper and more mature, more complex, more integrated from having sat in the same place for 6 years, even though it was inside totally inert glass. So that's also happening inside the barrel. So when we put a distillate to age in there, we're looking to it to sort of like go through oxygenation, to be digesting part of the or components from the oak barrel, and to, in itself, not just integrate those flavors into itself, but also develop other components, other flavors, other complexities and richness from chemical changes that are going on inside the product itself. All right, what kind of oak do we use? We experiment with a lot of oaks. We, Allier, Nevers, Vosges, Tronchet. These are all forests in France, and a lot of them were planted by Napoleon to provide, they thought they were going to need oak ships in 200 years. And so they planted a lot of these. These are state-owned forests, and so the wood, they're very carefully harvested and from old trees, so you get these very beautiful wood. We settled on Limousin, which is more subtle, slightly more delicate, slightly sweeter than the others. And that goes well. We make a somewhat delicate, fruity, elegant product that over experimentation proved best with Limousin oak. We tried Hungarian, we tried American. American doesn't work for us. It's simply too powerful. The oak flavors are too powerful. They work well with whiskey. Even a lot of whiskeys, like Scotch, for example, and a lot of American brandies, mass-produced brandies, use used whiskey barrels that have had most of their oak flavor extracted by their first use because it's so powerful. Anyway, and we insist that it be air-dried. Air drying is incredibly important for two reasons. One is if you use a kiln, which is what most of the large cognac manufacturers use, the kiln-dried oak barrels because they can get them so much faster and they're cheaper. There's always a slight sense in the oak of being a little bit corrupted or more, rotten. If you turn a log over in the forest and smell it, that's the kind of like sense that you get when you use kiln-dried oak. Air drying also breaks down the carbohydrates while it's happening so that they're more accessible to the alcohol. And air drying tends to reduce the tannin level in the oak, so you don't get as much astringency or bitterness in your oak flavor. And we work with a guy named Vicard who air dries all his oak for a very long period of time, 3 or 4 years. We pay $1,200 each for them, but they're worth it. And then the size of the barrel. The larger the barrel, the less exposure to the outside air per liter of volume. And the smaller, you get very intense, you get very quick aging because the ratio of volume to the area of the inside area of the barrel is things happen a lot faster inside a small barrel. This 350-liter size is what emerged over time, probably years and years, centuries of experimentation of what the best ratio of oak to liquid was. We use almost all standard cognac barrels. We have a few smaller ones. We have a few older ones back in the background there that we use for various things. We have some very old, 100-year-old 500-liter barrels. And then, obviously, I'm standing in front of some new oak barrels. These are, and some used ones. These are ones we bought in cognac used because in the beginning we needed barrels that didn't. When we put Germain Robin brandy into a new oak barrel, it pretty much has as much oak as we want it to pick up after about 9 months. And so what you have to do is actually pull it out after 6 months and put it into a used barrel because it can continue to pick up a reduced amount of oak in a used barrel. And eventually you want to put it in a barrel which has been used so much there's practically no flavor left and no oak flavor left in it whatsoever. Inside a used barrel, brandy continues to oxygenate, and it continues to go through the internal sort of like digestion maturation process, but it quits picking up oak. So a lot of the work in here is figuring out exactly how long we want to use a brandy, leave a brandy inside a barrel that has been new or used for a short period of time or for a long period of time. And a lot of that depends on what we intend it for. Are we going to sell it in 15 years? Are we going to sell it in 7 years? Are we going to sell it in 30 years? Are we going to keep it for a very long time? If you keep things for a very long time, 50 years or more, you end up putting them inside of glass carboys so that they quit having anything happen at all. I'm going to mention a couple of little complexities that I couldn't fit into when I was talking earlier. First is one of the major differences between American and French oak is that American oak is, the way it's harvested and used, it comes out of they're good-sized trees. When they're making staves, they do it by splitting the wood vertically, and because of that, they can only use somewhere between 25 and 40% of the wood that they get. They never use cross grain, and if you look at any one of these, French oak barrels, there's always this beautiful vertical grain, very tight and so forth. It comes from that. That's how they did. They split the oak, and then American oak, they use it all. And so they end up having cross grain, and cross grain is more open. Evaporation and aging is way faster in an American oak barrel than it is in a French oak barrel. French oak barrels, the process is slower, and to our minds, it produces a more subtle and slightly more complex product than putting it in American. This is flavor apart. We're just talking about what happens to the product inside of a French oak barrel, which has been made out of vertical grained oak. The other sidelight I want to mention is that you can cheat. In the places in, let's say, cognac that they don't show you, there are these absolute forests of huge 2,500 or 3,000 gallon vertical upright barrels, and you put the cognac in that and leave it there for 20 years, and you can say on your label that it was 20 years old, but of course it hasn't had anywhere near the amount of oxygenation or digestion of oak flavors that it would have had in a 350-liter barrel. And so what they do to make up for that is saturate cognac in oak chips until they get this very heavily concentrated oak flavor in the brandy, and then they blend that into a product that's been sitting in one of those oak casks for 15 or 20 years. They can say it's 20 years old, but they can call it an XO. But if they had taken that same product and put it into small barrels, 350-liter barrels, they'd have something which was, for 20 years, they'd have something which was genuinely far superior. But of course, it's way more expensive to buy these $1,200 barrels and age in them. But that's something we don't do. We use the vertical uprights for blending, but all of our aging is in 350-liter barrels.